and I welcome you to the Parks and Open Spaces Committee meeting of this day. The City of Parksville recognizes the people of the Coast Salish Nations and their traditional territory upon which we gather with gratitude. And if I could, please, could I have an adoption of the minutes of the meeting held on April 2nd, 2020?
Yeah, so moved.
Seconded.
Thank you very much. And approval of the agenda for today for May 7th as well, with the project updates and some reports.
So moved.
Yeah, seconded.
Good. Okay, thank you very much. So one of the first things that I wanted to bring across now that our budget cycle has been completed, Warren and I have been looking at some of the parks projects that are on the books for this year, and a couple of them have come forward and are causing a bit of consternation for us. We're not sure where they came from. I think there's some legacy projects here, and I'm concerned about some of the costing on them and some of the scope as well. And so what I wanted to do was run through the committee today and ask what your thoughts are on. So the Kin Hut down at Community Park, there is budget this year for design and development standards for issue for construction documentation to go out for next year, to go out to tender for a build of a new washroom facility and storage, perhaps storage facility down to replace the old Kin Hut. I think through the process as it was going down, Warren was quite involved to a certain extent about meeting with all the different sport organizations that work out of Communities Park or play out of Community Park, whether it be pickleball, lacrosse, soccer, slow pitch, tennis, and all of them wanting to have some kind of facility to have storage. And I don't know if it was captured correctly and the scope started to creep up on us. And so what I'm looking at now is so $80,000 for this year for design and documentations for issue for construction, and then 480 for next year or 420 for next year. I think we need to relook at this, go back to the community and accurately gather what they need. And do we even want to provide storage options? Is that, or do we need a washroom and a change facility perhaps? And so just looking to go back to now that we have this committee and get a little bit of direction in what you guys think is the best way to go forward. And perhaps Warren can sort of provide a little context here into is what took place during the public consultation period prior to us going forward with the budget as it is now.
Sure. I think that through the Community Park Master Plan came forward, and there's probably at least 13 different user groups down there that utilize the sports field, lacrosse box, being softball, Pagosa, there's the night leagues, lacrosse, the pickleball, and multiple other ones. And so in the past, we had one old change room that's in the current building that was divided up into 3 or 4 units. And then we modified that into about 10 spaces, but the user groups find that it's too small for storage for them, and they'd like to seek additional storage. When we relayed that to the engineer that was leading the RFP for the design process, it came across that the storage that's desired from the user groups significantly increases the budget of the building to the point where it doesn't meet the current budgeting standards. So I guess we'd just be looking for direction from council as to like how far along that road do we go? Do we provide the storage that the user groups would be looking for? And if so, at what cost to the city, and ongoing plans for costs for the user groups.
Right, and if I may, if I may, Guy, in response to what Warren was just saying, I remember the conversation quite clearly, and we talked about it would be a good idea to have some storage in the Kit Hut along with the washroom facilities, the new washrooms. However, it was when we were talking about it, we said it would be very limited storage, like maybe storage for four different groups. You just outlined there's way more than 4 that actually use that. And the thing is that city wasn't really responsible for the storage of their equipment. It just makes, you know, like I used to run the baseball down there. So I know how convenient it was to have all my baseball gear down there rather than sitting in my garage. But the thing is that that wasn't expected. We were just actually happy to have the fields, to be quite honest. So it's a luxury. But at that time we said, if there was going to be just any storage space in that, it should be rented out. It should be not a given type of thing. And it would be 2 units, and they wouldn't be very large either. Like, we talked about the pickleballers, you know, what they would use anyways to, you know, is basically like just their nets and stuff like that. So it wouldn't take a large amount of space. So our idea is that, you know, it would be like the width of the washroom facility normally, with a little bit added on, maybe an extra 4 or 6 feet added on type of thing, divided into 4 different compartments. And then we would rent that out to whoever's ever successful to get it, to help offset the fact that it's the cost of the building itself. And that's kind of where we said, I don't know how the process would be to who we're renting to and who we're not, who gets first chance, is it a lottery system or whatever. But that's how I remember it. And the other comments that came up just as background for Guy, other sports organizations have in the past utilized the curling club that's down there. And we did as well. I rented space from the curling club because the curling club have a bunch of space upstairs above their seating up there. And so I rented space for our baseball association up there type of thing and paid for it. And so there are other options for people to do that. And the curling club gave me a key and the passcode as well. So the thing is that was, you know, like 3 or 4 years ago now. But the thing is that there are other options for people to do that. But I certainly can't see us actually having to increase our budget just for storage. I would not be in favor of that. But this is just myself speaking, because I think, you know, I think, Guy, you just mentioned with design and so forth, we're talking about $500,000, right?
Yeah. So I think there's an $80,000 sort of to get the actual design done. Right. And then 420, if I remember correctly, in the budget for next year. Prior to arriving in this fine community, I was in the process of developing a new sports complex, and we were putting in an accessible washroom facility. One of the pieces that was there that was being built for children with cognitive and physical disabilities to be able to provide, and it was a Challenger baseball, so it was an accessible washroom and with no storage. A couple of universals as well, so any gender, and we were looking at far over $500,000 for this facility itself. You know, and we're talking state of the art, not a lot of bells and whistles, but we want to build something that's going to be good for the next 20 to 25 years and prove the test of time and keep providing good service to the community. So, and this is where my conundrum sort of came, is that, you know, as Warren alluded to, 13 different groups, and yourself alluding, Councillor O'Brien, to, you know, there's an expectation to a certain extent that we're going to provide this. And we had some consultation, I believe, and people sort of, it's gotten a bit out, I'm cautious about scope creep on this project. I want to make sure that we have the right location. We are doing the stormwater management plan, as you know now, down for Community Park. Within that going through as well is you know, archaeological assessments and where there could be First Nations heritage sites, and we have to be cognizant of that. So we're kind of putting the cart ahead of the horse here, and I really want to make sure that we, you know, what we bring forward to council and to the communities is what they want, and we're on time and budget. And I have fears for that, for the way it is now. And the other thing, you know, do we provide storage or do we not? When we have to spell that out as well, because we get into that scenario of sea cans. You know, the cans that go on the boats, that whether they be 4x8 or they're 8x10, or they're quite commonplace in a lot of different municipalities on the sporting facilities for storage for groups, and they're unsightly from my point of view, and they just don't really fit what we're trying to. You know, they provide septet issues and graffiti magnets, and so I just my whole point to bringing this one up was to hopefully get a recommendation from the committee to council to have us go back to the drawing board on this and make sure, you know, and whether we flesh this out and say we recommend that we don't provide storage, or there's only 6 storage units and they rotate on a, you know, a seasonal basis for kids first, perhaps over adults. You know, and that's what I'm looking for here. And Councillor Frass, perhaps you have something that you could provide for us as well.
Yeah, thank you. My thoughts around this is that I'm not too familiar with all the different user groups that are looking for storage, or what exactly what their needs are in depth. So it's hard for me to give a recommendation as far as exactly which path we should go down. I do think, off the top of my head though, that sticking with our budget with what we have in place is where we need to be right now. But you know, unfortunately, we don't have a report to have given this previous thought. This conversation is just kind of coming up for me right now, so it takes a little bit of time to consider the possibilities going forward. But again, I don't exactly know, when you say all 13 different groups, you know, which groups are there. There's the obvious ones to me, the baseball groups. There's pickleball that use them as well. I see soccer being played out there and that, but I think I need a little bit more information as far as to how much space they're looking for and how many different groups. If you're talking about those C cans, for as an example, would 13 different groups be looking for 13 different C cans, or how much space are they looking for?
And I think that's just it in a nutshell, is that what we have for background on this is went to a point where we were looking at the square footage of the site that we were going to build based upon the feedback we got. And it's a bit convoluted, and that's where we need to go back and figure out, if we're going to provide this storage, we need to find out exactly who needs storage and how much they need, and build that in if that's the course that we're going to go. I don't feel comfortable with the dollar value now, and to where the last bit of pieces that I saw that it got to, you know, and maybe able to provide a little more context in that, knowing a little more background. But I'm just not comfortable with how it sits now. I was looking for some recommendations. Councilor Brad.
Yeah, Warren, I didn't want to jump the queue here. Warren, did you want to respond to that?
Just to say that the storage that's being provided now, which they're saying is not enough, is approximately 2 foot by 2 foot by 8 foot tall. So that's been part of the issue with the user groups, is they find like the softball people have their carts, and there's like 3 different leagues for that. 2 different leagues for that. And then the soccer and everybody else on top of that. Soccer, there's mostly the little kids. I don't think that there's an adult league there that's using storage, but there is direction to provide the C-CAN for the softball.
Can I ask just a question there before you get going, Doug?
Go ahead, Adam. Go ahead.
Is part of the concern with, I understand how having storage on site there is definitely handy, so you don't have to be hauling it back and forth between your house and the fields there. Is any of the need for storage though just due to a lack of having the garage space to hold these types of things? Are they needing on-site storage, or would possibly storage, you know, for example, in industrial park suffice to any degree, so where you could put a cheaper option like a C-CAN, but maybe it's not on site, but then they're not having to take it home? Is that filling any kind of need at all, or is it nothing to do with that and just being on location?
I think it's maybe a combination of convenience as well. There may not be room at the various user groups, personal residences, or there may be, but it's also a matter of anybody can show up and the equipment's there and available. And if so-and-so doesn't show up to play today, then that's okay, because all the stuff is, you know, here rather than being at his house. So I think it's mostly a convenience issue for most of the groups. Some of the stuff, I will say, is larger than perhaps they would want to cart themselves in their own vehicles, unless they had a truck. So there's just issues around transporting.
Right. Thanks, Guy. Just my comments after what you're saying here, Guy. It's kind of making more sense to me that we just actually eliminate the storage component from this the kin hut replacement. The priority always was all access washroom for that, you know, with the power doors and so forth. Which is very important to have down there. The washroom is a long ways away, down at the other end, down by the playground there. And so the thing is that, and the kin hut is just a disaster right now, quite frankly. So for cleaning and everything. So the thing is that I believe the priority should be to do the all access washroom, not consider have the engineering not consider a storage component in it, but with the knowledge that going forward is that there may be a storage component option available, because as you many are aware anyways, we're having negotiations with the RDN regarding the Parksville Curling Club as well. So if the Parksville Curling Club actually was reverted back to the city of Parksville and in some way, shape or form, it would be much, to me, from what you're saying with all these user groups being involved, if we were able to piggyback on the backside of the curling rink itself, so you didn't have to go through the curling rink and over by where they used to keep their chemicals on the backside there, where the gravel parking lot is. If we piggybacked out there and put an add-on building out there that was strictly for storage for the different user groups, that would be down on the fields, it would be out of sight. I agree, those sea cans are just horrible looking, and they're just a graffiti magnet. But the thing is that just keep the storage right away from the washrooms. And I think, you know, as Adam says, we've got a budget already in place type of thing. And if engineering can get this done for the budgeted amount and put in a proper, decent washroom, all accessible and gender non-specific as well, I think that's the target we should be going for this time. And let's the storage thing, looking at it now, it's going to be a red herring here, because it's going to be who gets in, who doesn't get in. And, oh, by the way, it's not big enough. And, you know, they're not going to be happy. So I think in this particular case, we follow our mandate of providing the washroom. Just my thought.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Frost, anything to add on that? Or
I don't disagree with what he's saying. Definitely the priority is the washroom component of it. And I think he brings up a good point, is unless you're providing enough storage space for everybody, then it's just the battle kind of continues. So yeah, I think as far as storage space goes, we need to still think, brainstorm what can be done in the future. But at this point, it might not be the best path to go down for $500,000 to come up with something that might not meet the needs of all 13 groups to begin with. I do think there is that possibility, though, you know, perhaps maybe exploring as a compromise is to maybe providing places like a CCAN in industrial parks, that they have some space. While it's not a location, it might alleviate some of the pains of having somewhere that's secure to put lots of equipment that maybe the entire team can access, or you know, there's a few key players, so that if someone's not there and can't make it that day, the stuff's not stuck in their home, but they could maybe get to a secure location where it doesn't matter if it's so unsightly because it's not in, you know, down at the park.
Okay, perfect. That's just what we were looking for. Warren, do you have?
Yeah, can I just ask about if that's the route we go down, and I think it's, for me, simplifies a lot of things. So that's great. But could we get direction, maybe, whether it's from senior staff or from council, about not having any CCANs or storage lockers in place in the community park? It's going to be the option that they're going to want to push moving forward. So if we're not providing storage in the washrooms, then can we also state that we're not providing storage in other locations in the community park?
I wonder if that's a separate discussion that we have on sort of, I'm just curious, gentlemen, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts, just up front from what Warren was saying, I think Adam and I could put a notice of motion through to council to talk about the kin hut washroom replacement, and have a resolution go through anyways, with council willing, of course, to actually eliminate the storage component from this time. And then the motion could also read, and to further study possibilities of storage in another location in the vicinity of the park, but to eliminate it. That way you can keep the ball rolling with engineering on having the design and the RFPs go out for that. I believe, Adam, would you be in favor of that? If we could set that up for the next meeting, the regular council meeting?
Yeah, before I answer that, I just have a question then too. Is any of the storage component of that building utilized by the city of Parksville? Do we need any storage space at all?
Janitorial storage, we would just call that a custodial closet and perhaps not be as affected as for the user groups, perhaps.
So if we were to remove any storage space in that component, then we're not compromising janitorial storage then?
I don't think so, no.
And right now, you mentioned it's 2 by 2 by 8 foot. Is just the one storage space, or is there multiple lockers of that size? Or
it's multiple. It's an old change room that was converted into storage, and I'm guessing that there's 10 to 12 down there. Don't quite remember the exact number.
Mm-hmm. Again, it's one of those things like that wasn't something I was considering before coming to this meeting here. So removing the storage completely, I think I'd have to give that a little bit more thorough thought before if it was something I'd make as a recommendation to remove it completely. Go ahead, Doug. I'm
just thinking on the run here. What happens if we left the building up? What happens if we left up the kin hut, converted it over to total storage only? Total storage and maybe possibly some use for City of Parksville Parks crew as well. But I mean, using the kin hut and then locating the new washroom in that general area. Does it have to be there? I mean, I understand that the plumbing is already there. You've got water and waste going into it and probably power feed. But the thing is that what happens if we just put a standalone building with the washrooms in it, leave the kin hut there, put a coat of paint on it and call it storage?
Great idea. It is an option for sure. Warren?
Just that there was another, further out, there's another washroom facility planned near where the park shed is situated, near the picnic shelter now. That was, I'm not sure, maybe 10 years out. So that's another option for another facility. And it also would go hand in hand with the performance stage that's supposed to be in that vicinity, because I don't believe there's a public washroom in that facility. So having one close by would be efficient. But I do think the cost is going to go up significantly because you're looking at more multi-purpose, because you'd be replacing the park facility that's there. So city storage. There was talk of a meeting room over the kin hut facility, so perhaps that could be moved to there. So it's a bigger footprint, a bigger price tag.
Sorry, Warren, if I can just ask a question. Are you referring to over by where the park storage shed is now, over by where the new Performing Arts Theater is going? You're on that site. Yeah,
that's right. There was every year we have 4 portable washrooms that go into that site, and they're used mostly by picnic shelter users and somewhat of the sports field as well. But if we anticipate the increased usage of that site, then we'll anticipate increased washroom facility need as well. So there's some issues there.
Right. Yeah. Oh, okay. I was just thinking, like, I guess more short term right now,
yeah.
Just for the kin hut, just to. I'm thinking that the kin hut could be converted over to just storage only. Obviously, the toilet and basins would have to be removed, but that would be done relatively. They just have to be capped. And I don't see a huge amount of budget that would have to go in just converting it over to storage. It's just my thoughts anyways. And as I say, being in the same location. I understand what you're saying too about the location in the future, Warren. And I think that will probably get a harder look if and when the Performing Arts Theater goes through. And to answer your question, I've seen the plans. There's washrooms provided in the Performing Arts Theater only for the performers themselves, for the musicians and so forth, not for the public. So there was no plan for that. But having said that, they're going to have plumbing taken over to that. So that would be part of the cost of their their budget as well. So,
and just to echo on your thoughts, if I could, there, Councillor O'Brien, is I think that's a very good out of the box thought to converting the existing washroom into a storage. It's kind of a, and in a short term, as you're saying, or a medium term kind of goal here, and looking for solutions in the future, we've kind of hit two birds with one stone, if I may, and be able to go forward with an RFP and get some design concepts through, and then look, and if we have to do any budget amendments at that time from what come through, we can do that with what's budgeted for the following year for construction. So I think that's a fairly reasonable, and then we can look at longer term storage options, and as Warren's saying, how the park's going to develop over time as well in a medium to long term capacity. So
I think moving forward, then instead of Adam and I working on a resolution for council, I think it would be probably prudent at this time if you kind of, Guy, if you ran this idea by engineering and think, just kind of just a conversation to say, if we kept the kin hut and for storage and convert it over, could we still stay within our budget and get a washroom and some slightly improved storage facilities at the same time, all for the budget that we've approved? That conversation needs to happen, I guess, before,
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. And that's exactly what I was after, was some ideas to be generated, and this is perfect. And so I'll take that forward, and we can report back at the next meeting on what we've come up with, and we'll go from there. Does that make perfect? Councillor Frass, does that work for you?
I think that sounds good. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the recommendations there, Doug.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Warren, you're fine with that, are you?
Yeah, I think it certainly looks at another look. This would be good.
Great. The next agenda item here is what we call the Rafiki Walkway, which is sort of an extension of Maple Glen that goes from Hearst Avenue across Ermineskin and then heads down towards Morrison Avenue. And it's a gravel-based thoroughfare at this time. That there was a proposal that was on the budget to pave this stretch. Neither Warren nor I have been able to find out where that came from, or it's another legacy project that we feel is needs to be looked at from a different with a different lens. The budget that we have to do this is there's $48,000 and then a carryover of $11,000, I believe, for a total of close to $60,000. And we're looking at probably, 200 meters plus of walkway. Is that not correct, Warren?
Yeah, I would guess. Yeah.
Yeah. And we obviously know that we're not going to be able to asphalt something for that budget. We might be able to do the first little piece between Hearst and Ermineskin, but we want to come back to the committee in the future and talk about connectivity from more of a holistic and sort of organic, I guess, nature, and look at how we want to move people, throughout the community outside of a vehicle and have connectivity. So we're proposing to take this off of the budget this year and come back to the committee and look for more, probably spend a couple of meetings on looking at connectivity and how we want to move people, knowing that we want to do the Rath Trevor Trail connection, knowing that we've got more development coming online and we're going to have some, green spaces and that we want to connect to. We just feel at this time that this is, we're not going to get, the intent won't be there with the budget we have to finish the development. And we don't think it's even the right thing to be doing at this time. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention, that we're looking for, I guess, support for us to strike this from the budget for this year and come back and revisit connectivity and mobility within the community. Doug.
I have a question, if I may, Guy.
Yep.
The thing is, Yes, I was trying to look up the Rafiki Walkway anyways before the meeting here to determine, and I couldn't even find out where it is. So it's actually, is this the walkway that's actually backing onto like onto some apartment buildings and townhouse complexes and in between Hearst and Ermiskin? It's only, I would say, about 6 feet wide type of thing, and it actually like just has people's backyard fences and so forth along it. Is this the walkway we're talking about here?
I believe it is, isn't it, Warren? Yes.
Kind of there. I don't believe there's any apartment buildings. I think it's all
Yeah.
residential properties, single family residences. I would estimate that it's probably 50 feet wide, not a narrow one. So it's got grass along either side of it. And then, sorry, my phone's ringing too, but so it's all residential property. So the first section from Hearst to Ermiskin is 2 residential lots deep. And then the second section, I would guess, is the balance of the 150 meters, but all single family dwellings. Yeah.
This doesn't border on the wetlands, does it?
No, it's nearby.
Oh, okay.
If you come down Chestnut to Hearst, it's immediately on your left, as it's an extension of the Maple Glen Walkway, as Guy said.
Okay, yeah, I'm familiar with Maple Glen. I'm just trying to get it in my head as to, like how much uses I've seen on it, because, as you know, I do a lot of walking in this community, and I don't remember seeing this one being heavily used, but if I want to have more information. But I understand what Guy's saying. I think it hasn't been really on our radar, as I haven't had requests of saying, oh, by the way, when are you paving Rafiki? Like from any of our constituents and so forth. But I would like to look at it further, but I haven't seen it being a pressing issue. I would have no problem with putting it off for this year and concentrate on maybe the other ones that we had mentioned, such as the Rath River Trail. Just my thoughts.
Okay, perfect. Councillor Frass?
Thank you. Same for me. I didn't know of this this trail here, so I just was finding it myself here on Google now. Just looking at where it is. I haven't heard this come up as a request or being an issue. Is it anything to do with Septet? Is that an issue with that area, like along with the paving, or looking for any lighting or anything? Was that anything in the scope of the project, or? No,
all we could find is it was just said basically pave Rafiki Walkway, and
okay. And it's currently it's gravel, is it?
Yes.
I'm gonna be heading out for a bike ride later on today, so I'm gonna go check it out, because like I say, I've never been down that trail portion myself before. So unfortunately, I don't have too much input as far as saying, like, if the question is to take it off the budget to postpone it. I would be supportive of that, because I haven't seen this being an issue, and I would like to know more of this trail before I would support going forward with anything.
Excellent. That's and as we come forward, and that's great. As I gain my knowledge base, and Warren and I work forward, and we connect with the committee, and we start to look at some of these options that we have here that are, what's our priority when it comes to trail development, and where's our number 1 and number 2 and number 3. So we just felt at the time that there's, and Warren as well really iterated this to me, is that there's bigger fish to fry at this time than this. And this was just something that popped up, had been planned 7-8 years ago, and came forward, and the budget wasn't accurate. And so it won't complete the scope of what was intended. So I thank you for that, and we will make that recommendation that we pull that off for this year, and we'll revisit.
Yeah, thanks. I think these kind of things can be difficult sometimes when they go stretch far back and there isn't too much history behind them. I know sometimes things can come up as a request, like I've spoken to you and asking you for thoughts on certain ideas. I think we're going to be talking about later today, even in one of the items. And sometimes they're just a brainstorm thought, looking for a little information, and then they sit there, and then suddenly it turns into a project down the road that someone's looking to budget for, and it maybe never had any intent.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. We have a far more rigor now in the process of project and budget development. With business cases and the CAO and Ms. Keller is really laying good groundwork in that way, that we have well thought out projects going forward that are going to be, number one, achievable and something that the community actually needs. So thank you very much, gentlemen. If I could, next on number 4 is reports. And this is sort of a follow-up to last meeting on Councillor O'Brien's comments about the Jensen Avenue Greenway project and when are we going to finish it? What are we going to do? And that sort of thing. So we did have a conversation, Warren and I, with engineering in regards to the Bagshaw upgrade that they're going to be doing to see if we could get some water off them for irrigation to provide onto this section of Greenway, and that's going to take place. So, which is great. We're gonna end up getting some water and be able to come forward with a spending package, a business case, of course. Again, business case and a spending package for council to deliberate about what do we want to see there, and we'll come up with some concept proposals. And you know, for myself, with the Berwick going in next to there being developed in that whole core area, you know, I consider this a key part of downtown. It needs to be safe, clean, and green. Number one, it needs to be attractive. It needs to be welcoming. So we're really excited that we're going to be able to maybe go forward with that idea once we have some irrigation to allow us to do this. One of the things that did pop up though is in some thoughts that we were having was from the stretch from Bagshaw, so heading south to McVickers. Is that how you say it? McVickers? To McVickers Street, where the community garden is. What would be, and this is just for discussion, you know, is the community garden itself, you know, we have an agreement with them. They're somewhat self-sufficient. You know, we provided the water, you know, they have the land, they have a lease with us, a lease agreement. With these new developments that are coming online, and the multifamily we have and more homes with reduced yard space, my thoughts were is perhaps the piece from Bagshaw to McVickers, we create a larger, or see if there's interest in creating more community gardens for people to, you know, to get out to and connect with nature. And specifically now, even with COVID, you know, you can see some of the hot trends that are out there as people are getting back to basics and planting gardens if they're able to, and starting to really, you know, everybody's making bread. You can't find flour, you can't find yeast, you know, and then these things, this may be something that becomes more inherent to us again as we go forward. And I really wanted to see what the thoughts were of the committee about us connecting with the Community Garden Association and seeing if they had any interest in perhaps increasing the scope or the footprint of their facility. Councillor O'Brien.
Thanks, Guy. I think it's a brilliant idea. Just off the top, I know the stretch you're talking about, it would be adjacent to the existing community garden. And right. it's after the construction, it's turned out to be somewhat of a barren piece of property. My thoughts are, if the Community Garden Association or group as such would be interested in that, I definitely think it would be great. I love already how the community garden, they're very productive. They work their butts off, and they're producing a lot of food, you know, for themselves, their families, their neighbors. And I think it's an amazing testament to their hard work, because they've done it. And if they could use the extra space, I say great. And as you say, with the amount of we have multifamily units going in that don't have their own yard space, everybody's looking for fresh produce now, type of thing. So I think it would be great, and it's almost perfect for it, because it would, from Bagshaw to McVickers, you know, and adjacent to it. I think it would be a great space, and you know, quite frankly, it's going to be less maintenance for the city of Parksville. Honestly,
and that's it exactly what my thoughts were, you know, and you know, whether we support them with the fence expansion and maybe sure. Some materials to build their, you know, it would be a business case and a spending package, and come forward with a proposal to support a great community initiative. So I think it's an important piece to our community as well. So, yeah. Councillor Frass. Sorry, Doug.
Thanks. I definitely support community gardens. I know one of the things we've looked at previously too is seeing if we could extend community gardens elsewhere in the community so that it has a larger geographical reach. One of the things with the Bagshaw area, McVickers, there are lots of backyard gardens as it is. There's the lots there are able to support it. But there are places like Stone's Throw where they don't have access to quite the same gardening ability. So having the community gardens there it's a wonderful gardens they do. I think there probably is a desire to be able to expand them, and I would like to know more about what's involved as far as like the ground preparation, or they need assistance with that type of thing, or like when you mentioned the fencing. So reaching out to them I think would be great, and utilizing that space since it's not anything being done with it now, I think makes a whole lot of sense, rather than it just being a place that is just a nothing land kind of right now. I think it would be great though too, as long as with community gardens, if we could have other community gardens in the city as well. If we're looking at that, is it a place like Ermineskin? There's they got a large double lot kind of or triple lot park area. I don't know if it's utilized a whole lot. Is that community, or would it be better utilized as a community garden space perhaps, or is there other places around Parksville that needs community gardens? When you talked about apartment buildings getting built where they don't have the same access, like up at Despard, perhaps, is there areas around there where they might be able to implement community gardens? So there's kind of two questions I think being asked in this. Is one, is it utilizing something of that space adjacent to the trail, or trying to find somewhere for more community gardens? And the one by the Jensen Greenway Trail, it might help solve the issue of what to do with that land. But I think maybe, like you say, reaching out to them, and if there's any desire to expand right now, because they did expand, I think 4 or 6 plots recently, and I think they're still vacant at this point.
Oh, are they?
If I'm not mistaken. Warren, if you can add some input there, go ahead.
Yeah, we haven't reached out to them formally, but I did go by the other day just to get some contact information, and they did tell me they had a waiting list. Because we've been getting phone calls from people wanting a plot in the community garden. People assume that we're managing it. So I went by to get contact information because the old contact that I had was no longer responding. And they said they had a waiting list at that time. So also if we look at the density of the areas, then downtown's probably our highest density. That's what we're working towards. So it's a good location where it is. Secondary locations, we did go through a process 5 or 6 years ago where we were looking for an alternate location. At the time, the roadway was going to go through that Jensen Greenway area, so we were trying to find another space for the garden. So the community garden members had a certain criteria that they wanted met, close to bus stops and accessibility and things like that. And the city had other criteria they were meeting as well. And it was challenging to come up with other areas. We did suggest a few, and they didn't like the ones that we suggested, and vice versa. So, but it's certainly worth exploring, whether it's a second community garden that membership that takes over in a new location, or whether this one splits and expands into a couple locations would be worth pursuing for sure.
And a lot of times when we provide something like this, Warren and the rest of the committee, this can drive and really present opportunities for us. And the distribution, and if we look back to our Parks and Open Space Master Plan, and we look at the distribution, and this is just on another sort of idea, but the distribution of playgrounds and the amenities that we provide as a municipality to our residents, and how they're sort of congregating in certain areas, and that it's desirable to spread those out. And the same goes said to reflect upon your comments, Councillor Frass, about where that density up on the Despard area, and trying to create a couple of different locations for people to access. And I'm glad Warren brought up, there's great transit service right there. There's lots of areas to park. There's, large parking areas around there for people that want to. And plus it's fairly walkable to get there. If, from a lot of those areas up above off Despard, it's not that far. So, it's just a really logical idea to me, to take this piece, expand, reduce our maintenance costs, as well as Councillor O'Brien said, something that we're not going to have to look after. We're going to have, some stewards of that piece of land. So what I'm hoping for is a recommendation from the committee for us to go forward and contact them and see if there's any appetite for expansion.
Yeah, I would support that, putting the recommendation forward. I do wholeheartedly support community gardens. I think they're wonderful things. So for this space, it does seem like it's the best, best use at this time to utilize it. Wonder too if there's any thoughts about having certain standards in place though for community gardens. So like as far as the beds, are they, I think the right way they are right now, they're up to the individuals to kind of make up their own beds. Would you be looking to have any standards in place as far as, where the composting would happen or what the beds look like? So there's some kind of, beautification that goes along with it as well.
I think there's a great opportunity for us to connect with them and find out exactly what their mandate is. I've got the agreement in front of me, and it's more the legalese, thou shalt not kind of thing, and who has responsibilities where. But to maybe get a hold of their executive and have some conversations and see how we can support and encourage active gardening in our community. And see what they have for their mandate for their members. Like, do they have volunteer time where they look after the grounds in general, and what happens if something falls into a state of disrepair and that sort of thing. So I think it'll create a great opportunity for us to maybe work with them and assist them. And we definitely don't want to get in their way. I think I don't know if Warren's heard from them over the last few years in any asks or wants. I don't know if we've had any issues from bylaws in regards to composting and that sort of thing, or interfering of other residents. And I don't have that background, but I haven't heard anything lately, so nothing's popped up yet in those regards. So I just think that it would afford us a great opportunity to have a conversation with them. Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Guy. I agree totally with what you said. So maybe for the short term anyways, the committee here can give you the guidance of the resolution to proceed to contact the Community Park Garden Association to convert that section on the Jensen Greenway over to see if there's an appetite for that for the short term, but also to mention, as Councillor Frass had suggested, and maybe mention it to the Community Garden Association, that we are community garden friendly in Parksville here type of thing, and we would be amenable to a suggestion to have another one up in the higher density area, up in the Despard area. We have properties up there that are large parks that could be utilized, or portion could be taken off for it. And I think to let them know that for the future that we are considering, expanding it as well. But in the meantime, let's get this one going on Jensen, solve two problems right now that we have with it, but to let them know that, hey, if you've got a waiting list already for this one, maybe by that time they'll have a waiting list for another location. As Councillor Frass mentioned, that's where a lot of the high density is going, and I'm not sure where the bus routes are going to be, if they're going to be adjusted now with all the building that's going on there, but I think it would probably meet the needs of the Community Garden Association up there as well.
Councillor Frass.
Guy, if I could, would be able to make a request to them to come and meet with either the committee when we're able to meet in person, or with council, just to have a little bit of a two-way dialogue with them as well. I'd like to kind of see a bit of where their vision is, and if there's a little bit of possibilities to expand our kind of relationship. I'd like to find out things like, are any of the community garden beds growing for our food bank? Is there a possibility to dedicate a bed for that purpose? And maybe things like incorporating a community garden, but, a central, tree space or gathering space, or kind of like a park area for the members or something like that. Like, I'd just like to see how that relationship can be expanded. Because I think community gardens are great. And in my opinion, it's a little bit under appreciated for what we have here in Parksville. So maybe we can blossom that a little bit more.
Okay, great. I don't know when we'll ever get to meet in person again. Warren and I were actually just talking off the cuff the other day a little bit about, I don't know how it would work or not, but I would, at some point, I would love to be able to have the committee go on site to a couple of locations to really put our eyes on. There's a couple areas, and Maureen just made mention of here. You know, I don't want to get too down the wormhole here, but Mark's Nature Park, you know, is, and some of the challenges we're facing over there, and there's opportunities and things that we really want to explore. But you know, we can look at it on Google Maps, and I can send you documents and stuff, but actually sitting there and putting our eyes on it, you know, on a sunny day like today would really open it up to, you know, the possibilities. So hopefully we can have these types of interactions, you know, whether it's even meeting at the community garden one day and having you know, a real open conversation with these folks and see if there's, you know, we'll reach out to them as advised, and you know, whether they want to come forward and have a conversation with council or the committee, or be, you know, we want to be able to have special guests come forward and present their, you know, their concerns and their issues to us. So we can definitely have made a note of that to see, hopefully one day we'll be able to do that again and not. Councillor O'Brien.
I think that's a great idea, and I think actually we could maybe try incorporating that into our meetings itself as a committee. That in meeting could be like as part of a field trip, and you know, the field trip is going to be to whether it's Mark's Park or Community Park or Rafiki Walkway, and we're going to meet there, type of thing, and then we can carry on. Hopefully, this distancing won't be going on that much longer, so I'm sure that we could certainly meet safely anytime in the near future right now, but at the same time, as far as our meeting, and then having meeting following up, type of thing. But correct. It is way easier to brainstorm when you're standing and you got a tree 3 feet in front of you, type of thing. You say, yeah, well, we could put the kin hut there, but we can't put it there. Why? Because there's a big tree there, you know? Yeah. Never thought of that, but if you're on site, you know, those things are pretty obvious. I think it's a great idea. It makes sense that Parks and Trail Committee actually meet in the Parks and Trails, which apparently
meet in the parks,
which apparently looks like where Councillor Fraz is right now. Yeah. Right now, Councillor Fraz.
No, that's great, and we can always go out and just do a little reconnaissance and then come back and have an open discussion that's captured by way of on the recording for the public. So excellent debate, gentlemen. Thank you very kindly. So we will, as per recommendation of the committee, if all are in favor, we will reach out to the community garden and ask them if they have any appetite for us opening conversations and looking at seeing what kind of opportunities present themselves. So if I could have a motion for that. Councillor Frass, and in favor? Councillor O'Brien. Excellent. Thank you very much. Last on the agenda today is again back to some communications that I had with Councillor Frass in regards to the community park traffic circulation study, and Councillor Frost had reached out to me one day. He was down there visiting the park with his daughter and noticing a few things that were coming up, and knowing that we do have a traffic study coming forward that's in the budget this year. Warren and I reached out to engineering in regards to see whether some of Councillor Frost's concerns would be captured in this, and what the expectations of the whole study were to be and what it looks like. And they actually came up with a pretty good idea here, and I'm not sure where they're at with it yet completely, but they're looking at using the consultants that are on site now that are doing the stormwater master plan. They are sort of a civil catch-all group, like many consultants are and have in their back pocket. And this would really cut down our time in going out to the market and RFP and trying to find somebody to come in and do a traffic study or a circulation plan. And one of our concerns that we did have was with the COVID situation that's on now, how much of a like if they get in there to put eyes on it and see it actually during Beach Fest, during Kite Fest, during Canada Day, whatever it may be, or on a weekend when, you know, all of our hotels and our resorts are full and people are coming out here to enjoy this beach, and fly a kite, how this is going to look when we don't have that many people, when we don't have the sports competing at the same time. And so that was a concern that we had, was, can we still do a traffic study that's going to be accurate without having the amount of traffic that we normally would? So, and we think we can. We think we can provide good numbers, and we think any good, any good traffic management professional should be able to look at it, whether it's full of traffic or not, and find deficiencies and find solutions for us. So, open for debate.
Yeah, I'll mention something here too. Just if I could, Doug, I'll just give you a little bit of background of some of those items that I was mentioning with Guy. Being down at the park, was noticing things like if you, for example, park at the curling rink parking lot there, right off the side of the curling rink, it's not always just because you're going to the curling rink. You might be going down to the playground or down to the beachfront. But as you come out of that parking lot, if you had a stroller or wheelchair or anything like this, there is no sidewalks connecting to that point. So you're walking along the road or having to go up onto the grass and push along in the grass. So that sidewalk, it connects only halfway around the tennis courts, but not around the other side. And then when you do get to the side with the sidewalk there, as you connect over to the park, if you're going to go to the playground, for example, the only path to take is you take the crosswalk that leads you to the food trucks, then from the food trucks over to the washrooms, and then from the washrooms, you backtrack towards the playground, even though directly across from the tennis court there, where the parking is, the handicap parking, there is a letdown to let you into the park there by the wheelchair swing, but it doesn't have a crosswalk that connects to the sidewalk. So you're either having to jump down the curb. And so I was asking if there is possibilities of putting a crosswalk out of that access point connecting to the sidewalk with a letdown there, but recognizing it is fairly close to another crosswalk already. So what are the implications of a situation like that? And is it doable? Does it make sense at all? Or those are some of the observations.
Councilor Brian.
I think it's great. It's a great idea, because the thing is that I've noticed it's a piecemeal. It looks like it was a jigsaw puzzle with a bunch of pieces missing. It's a great picture, but they don't link up. And as Councillor Fraz has pointed out, like getting from the parking lot, which, that parking lot it's a bit of a mess anyways, quite frankly, in between the tennis court and the curling club. But the thing is that I think that with Guy's suggestion about using the existing consultants, I think would be a good first step to go on. But then afterwards, I think what Councillor Fraz is proposing, it's kind of common sense, but it's like, okay, can we just do a letdown here to link up? And if we put a crosswalk here, I think with all of us maybe having a field trip down there, I think we could come up with some pretty good suggestions. It's not going to solve all the problems, but it's going to definitely improve it, as to what Councillor Fraz has said, to make more connectivity for all access from the different areas of the park for a relatively low number on the budget. I'm afraid of coming up with any huge numbers like a big traffic consulting or repaving the whole park and stuff like that, because it always gets thrown out because it's just way too much money. But this idea is like, let's take what we already have and let's make it work together. And I think that idea is great, and the consultants probably come up with a little bit of that. And then with our committee, I think afterwards we can look at it and say, okay, how can we do this for a reasonable amount of money? I think it's a great idea.
Or perhaps even which step we would go, maybe in phases, or,
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I know Warren had a bit of connectivity on this issue just today, and perhaps he can spell out a bit of that, if you could, Warren, about some of maybe the highlights of what we're trying to achieve through this study.
Sure, and I think too, with going with the same project leaders that are running the drainage plan, we can save considerable amount of money. They've already done all the ground truthing. There's no sharing from one contractor to another. It's all within the same house. I think it's a great benefit. But some of the things we'd be looking at would be accessible access to the park from the downtown areas. So some of those hills are too steep for access for people with accessible difficulties. And in addition would be access to the beach for that same group of people. It is tough in a lot of areas from the community park to access the beach. So we'd be looking at how to manage that. And then as far as connections, Adam, the same as you were speaking to the curling rink, the paved parking area to the beach, there isn't really a direct connection, and we've all seen people walking on the road in order to get there. And then the access, unfortunately, from once you get there seems to be through the food truck area, where it's pretty congested through there and there isn't really a crossing there. So getting a proper flow of people from that side of the park to the beach, I think, is an important aspect, as well as you said, the playground area with the crosswalks there. Just, I guess we would like a little bit of information as to, you know, how do you manage two crosswalk areas or that are that close together. Areas near to the curling rink as well. There's an intersection there where you go around the tennis court oval there. There's an intersection there that basically everybody just walks diagonal across the intersection rather than taking the two crosswalks. So we would like to look at formalizing things like that. And then there's the parking where formalizing perhaps the gravel lot areas at the sports field and behind the curling rink. And then also looking at the suggestion to make the Sandcastle Drive a one-way road going out along the beachfront and then back behind the curling rink to exit the park, helping to reduce congestion for the traffic as well.
Excellent, thank you, Warren. Okay, so if there's no more, that was just wanted to provide that update to the committee. And that's all that's on the agenda today, and open it up for new business if there's no more debate on the traffic study. And I'd open to Councillor Bryan if you have anything you'd like to bring up for new business.
Thanks, Guy. I just have a few questions here. I'll obviously alternate with Councillor Fraz as well, because I'm sure he has some as well. I just had questions regarding, I understand now that the tree inventory is now complete. Is that correct? And just kind of wondering, is there recommendations out of the tree inventory? Is that done? And kind of how does that tie in with the tree bait program? So the question is, I guess, is the tree inventory complete? Is there recommendations out of that? And let's leave it at that question first.
I'll defer that to Warren if I could.
I'll say that we've used the budget, and we have completed all the inventory of the street trees within the city of Parksville, as far as official trees that were planted on the boulevard by the city or developer. And we've also completed inventory of all the trees in the community park and several of the other larger parks like Foster Park. But there are a significant number of trees, additional trees that are on city property that aren't accounted for. I think there's about 3,500 trees that we have in our inventory so far. And the inventory isn't just marking where the tree is on the map, it's an assessment of the tree. So out of that, it gives us guidelines as far as to, I can bring up a list of all the trees that need pruning in the Maple Glen area, for instance, and then can send out a crew and we can start tagging those off the list. So we've also expanded the inventory program so that we can inventory other items for parks as well. So we're adding in the memorial benches, picnic tables, garbage cans and things like that, so that we can track those better too. So it's been a pretty successful program.
If I can just follow up, Warren, what was the number of trees that you've inventoried actually? Again,
I think it's about 3,500.
Right.
What I could do is I could send a link to the members of the council showing what the inventory program that we're using, and you'll see all the different colored dots, and maybe you can have a look at that, and then at a future meeting I can go through how we use the inventory and how we use it to manage our forest.
Right. I think that would be great. It's great to have a number too, quite frankly, Warren. I think it's fantastic. And plus it gives you a condition of the trees and needed services for that area. But what I'm looking for is, like, if we say, you know, here it is, May 2020, we have 3,500 trees in the city of Parksville. It would be easy for council to put in a resolution that we think that's great, but we want more trees. So, well, you're going to say, well, how many more trees do you want? We're going to say, well, we'd like 10% more. But now we have a number to go with. We can say, okay, well, let's get Parksville being tree friendly. I'm just pulling that out of my hat right now. So the thing is, but it gives us, so by the end of, the next budget, or like in a 5-year projection, we've added 300 trees or something. And so we've increased our tree inventory. And I think that's a worthy goal that we should be doing. But now we have a number that we can work to. We know we're in pretty good shape. We are, to me, Parksville is pretty good already, but we can be better. But the thing is that now that we have the numbers in place, I think that's going to be fabulous for us moving forward. So that's why I was asking about those numbers themselves, and if if they've identified where the trees are, but now I'm saying, can we identify where the trees aren't that there should be? Is there some place and plan? I'm taking heat over Parkhurst Place behind Serious Coffee, not far from the Public Works yard here. So the thing is that Parkhurst Place, for some reason, on the outside along Arbutus and where Serious Coffee is, they put in a drainage area, and it was a forest there, and so the people that were used to have the forest there, they didn't like the subdivision, fair enough. But then there was no trees put on the Parksville property or even around the drainage. It's not a berm, it's a drainage swale behind Serious Coffee, the Heritage Center there. And it's a barren wasteland right now. So I'm just wondering if there's some way that we identify areas like that, or do we just go on residential complaints or concerns to say, yeah, we can definitely add some trees into there. I'm just thinking out loud. Maybe you guys are already all over this, and I'm just not sure what to say to the people to say, we had a forest there, now we have nothing. What are you doing about it? I'm not sure. What am I doing?
Well, and your comments are not in light, for sure. They're very accurate. And one of the things that we have discussed in the past is an urban forest strategy, and that has been presented to the senior management team, and was hoping to have that ready to go out to you, to the committee itself, for review, and hopefully that'll be ready for next time, for you to put eyes on before we go forward, if it's approved by senior management, which I think it will. And that, if I could, Councillor O'Brien, is one of the things that comes out of a lot of urban forest strategies, from my knowledge, is they give you sort of through a committee poll and through the community, through the residents, through everybody involved, whether it be developers and the municipality itself and council, is what would be a canopy cover target goal that we would like to see. And 30% is sort of a target goal that's kicked around that many communities aspire to, and I would see that something of that nature happening. What they do as well is they look back and they go into orthos and they see what our coverage was in the past. They go back years, so 85, 75, 65. What did Parksville look like in 1965? And how much have we lost, and and they also do some LIDAR, which is some satellite imagery, and they're able to tell what type of trees we have, what constitutes our urban forest. Is it, initiator species such as cottonwood, maple, and alder, or is it coniferous? So they can ascertain all that and then hit the boots on the ground and they ground truth. So I'm really looking forward to, and I know Warren had this in the desire for the parks before I arrived, to once we had our two master plans done, our open space and our community park, this was the next natural progression. This is another piece that parks needs to properly look after the urban forest. So I think a lot of your questions would be answered. There would be lots of potential recommendations that would come forward from such a strategy of how to achieve these goals, and that sort of in that nature. So I hope that explains a little more of where we're sort of, what our target is right now going forward for the next year or 2 years. So, Warren.
Yeah, can I also just say too that I don't know if you can see that on my phone, but that's Parkhurst Place. That's our tree inventory there. So there's 9 Armstrong maples there. I can look that up on my phone. It's pretty easy. If I knew where the swale was you were speaking of, I could put a point on there saying this is a place to plant trees.
Okay.
So that's something we have the ability to do as well. And we have, let me just bring it back up again, 3,139 sites that we've inventoried with our inventory so far.
3,139.
That's right. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, that's great. Thank you. 3,000. Yeah. So the in Parkhurst Place, where you just showed me on your phone there, that's on the inside of the subdivision. If you look down at the entrance of the subdivision, that'll be Arbutus. I
Yep.
meant to say Arbutus Road type of thing. There's no trees got planted on the outside
Right.
of that whole strip, as well as on the extension to that would be Northwest Bay Road.
Yeah.
On that piece.
I think that's because that's the rural road standard and it doesn't require street trees, but engineering would probably be better able to answer that.
Yeah, I tried there. It was a bit of a mess 2 years ago, but
yeah,
things are different now.
And I think if I could, that'll be something that'll get captured going forward, and it's something that we're going to be bringing forward again is street trees in general. Who gets them and why do they get them, and who can say no and how can they say no, that sort of thing, as we try to increase this canopy, which is so vitally important, right? So I know these things are coming, are on the radar, and that we need to cover these off. So the list keeps growing on my wall behind me over here of things to bring forward to you folks. So hopefully we'll start to tick some big items off here and as we go forward. So anything else in round table? If you're done, Councillor O'Brien, if that's okay.
I was going to defer over to Adam. I have a few more things, but I'll let Adam take some microphone time here.
Okay.
Thanks, Doug. Feel free to go ahead if you have more things to discuss. Bring them forward. I'm good for right now.
Okay.
Thank you. If I can, Guy, then just a quick question. The tree bait program that was introduced earlier this year, just a quick ballpark, did many people take advantage of it?
What do we got, Fiona?
I think we're about close to $600 into it.
So
I think it's a $5,000.
Yeah, so I just checking in with Fiona, the recording secretary here, Fiona McDonald, by the way. You haven't met yet here. So who helps us administer the program? I think she's saying we've probably done a dozen, if not a few more so far already this year. And I'm not sure exactly if you remember correctly, Warren, what did we spend last year? Do you know of? I think there's a budget of $5,000 in the tree rebate. And
yeah, I don't know the number last year. It would be something that we should probably get back, but I will say that we should probably look at publicizing it again. I think that we need to make sure that people are aware that the program's out there, and maybe we can work towards with some social media posts and things like that, just reminding people that that's available and out there for people to use.
Thank you. Well, that's good news. A dozen trees or a dozen more than we had at the start of the year. So great work, guys. I think that's amazing. The other question I had was parks operation. What is the Parksville current policy on pesticide and herbicide use in the city of Parksville? If you want to answer this later, I'm okay with that.
Well, I think from my perspective, so when it comes to the applications of pesticides, which include insecticides, herbicides, fungicides, and the whole sides gamut, we are politically, provincially mandated to have that as a tool in our toolbox. To utilize by certified applicators, following a pretty rigorous pesticide process for application. And I don't know much about the past yet of what, I know we did some minimal sort of work, and whether it's with invasive species or noxious weeds of that nature, which were mandated provincially to again address as the noxious weeds themselves, as well as the invasive. And that's a tool within the toolbox. Typically, that's the last tool we want to access, is a chemical application. we want to try doing, you know, mechanical or cultural activities, mechanical being pulling or cutting, cultural being, you know, cover crops of that nature, something that's not going to allow it to get whatever it needs to grow properly. So, and I know that there hasn't been a lot here, and Warren will probably have better information on that. I will take the will of council for sure. I think the judicious use of pesticides by properly trained people doing proper applications is a tool in our toolbox that we should utilize when it's deemed appropriate. So, and that's my stand on that. I've been an applicator for 25 years. It's been instrumental in us achieving great green spaces for sporting infrastructure, getting rid of you know, invasive weeds on the sports, or even just, you know, large plantain outbreaks that can cause issues, playability, especially with baseball, and ball hops and skips, and then just even in our, you know, whether we use it in an ornamental nature isn't as big of a thing for me. You know, that's more of a cosmetic, isn't as crucial by any means, I don't think. Whether we're spraying concrete curb and gutter cracks to keep weeds out, that's not something I'm in favor of. But the judicial use of it to provide a safe, clean, green environment for our community, you know, so if it's clean, you know, weed free, you know, with the proper use, there shouldn't be any issues. As well as it can be budgetarily responsible, you know, much more responsible than, you know, a legion of people weeding, you know, certain areas, if we can get away with proper application. Warren?
I think that we've had really limited use of pesticides in the past. There was a point where, as Guy was saying, with the sports fields, for instance, where we went up there and we did the cultural control with the top dressing, the overseeding, trying to get the grass, fertilizing to get the grass in, flush and out choke the weeds. And when that wasn't working, then we moved to manually pulling the weeds, being mostly plantain at Springwood Park. So we did that for several years, and still the fields were getting to a point where they were becoming a safety issue for play. So at that point, we didn't have any choice but to blanket spray the fields at Springwood. So we employed a contractor to do that and posted all the notices as we needed to do, and closed the fields, I think, for a couple of days, and then managed it that way. Since then, every couple of years, we do a little bit of spot spraying again with a contractor. But we've never had to go back to that blanket spraying because we've managed to kind of get back up on control of it. We haven't really done any cosmetic pesticide applications. There's been some pest infestations, for instance, rose slugs on the roses at Pioneer Plaza, where we've done some safer soap, basically a soap application, which is still considered a pesticide, even though it's a soap, because we're applying it to control something. But we're also using biological controls. We've used Aphidoletes, which are an aphid wasp, I think, to control aphids on the oaks at PCTC. We've also released ladybugs. So we try as best we can to avoid chemicals, but there are certain instances where there just really isn't much else that works. We're also working with the Coastal Invasive Species Council. We have a budget for noxious weeds every year. And this year we're starting to take on gorse, which is a provincially regulated weed. We don't have a choice but to control it. So there's areas along 19A, basically adjacent to the resorts section there, the old bailiff property that has gorse there that we're treating the frontage on. And that's, honestly, through the years of experience on their part, more so even than us, there just really is no other way to control that plant. And that's one of the reasons why it is on the noxious weed list. And you might mistake it for broom. It looks a lot like it when you're driving by there, but most of the plant in that section of town is gorse, and it's a lot more dangerous than the broom would ever be.
Excellent. Thanks, Warren.
And thank you for that, gentlemen. And I agree 100% on the gorse anyways. Yeah. It's not like broom. Yeah, you ever try to pull a gorse, you know what a nightmare that is. And I understand because, and the questions are asked of me. That's why I have to ask them here, you know, because it comes up, and it was particularly, I know it was, yeah, the contractor that was in there. I didn't realize it was actually provincially mandated. And so now I have that information too. And I guess the good news is on that particular strip of land where the gorse is now, there's a development proposal in the works for that one. And we'll take care of that gorse. We'll just pave over the whole thing. So that gorse won't be coming back.
Let's hope not.
We'll plant some nice trees where the gorse was anyway.
That's right.
Or we'll have the contractor plant some. Thank you for that. The only other one I had, we were talking about trees earlier. Seems to be a common theme here. The FCM have a green committee, I believe that they call it, a green community committee. Anyways, that they have grants going out, applications or opportunities for grants, anyways, that are every year, and it was unclear to me. Like I spotted one, I guess, just after our first year on council, type of thing, kind of reading everything you get your hands on, and I was unclear on to who, like the FCM just for Councillor Frass, the FCM hands out grants, and fairly large grants anyways, for tree making greener communities throughout Canada. And so it's through their Green Community Fund, and they have many opportunities, and it seems to be on an annual basis. And I was just wondering if City of Parksville has taken advantage of any of this grant opportunities to do so. If so, is it up to our communications director to do it, or is it up to our parks and operations management? Who would look into that, and have you looked into it before? Has it been favorable, or what are your thoughts on that?
Please, Warren.
Yeah, the FCM I'm not too familiar with. We have worked with Trees Canada in the past and done planting projects at Marks Park, Foster Park, Springwood Park, and a couple of other ones as well that just escape me right now. And we've also gotten grants from BC Hydro for some trees too. I don't think we have done anything this year. We just weren't in the point where we had the large area of land that we kind of had in our mind to kind of replant. We did plant about 2,000 seedlings last year, and plan to hopefully kind of approach the same again this fall. So we would be looking at places like the Parksville wetlands and large areas like that, Springwood Park, perhaps, because we've had to take a number of trees down there. And right now our contractor is working in Foster Park, trying to eliminate the rest of the dead cedars in that park. So once we remove the coarse debris, or some of it anyways, we'll be looking at a replanting program for that park as well.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. I will send the link anyways from the FCM that you have as council. Councillor Frass probably gets it as well. We all get the FCM Federation of Canadian Municipalities is what it is. We all get the newsletter, and it comes out about, I think it comes out weekly or bi-weekly anyways. And I will send the link anyways to the committee anyways for that. And there, as I say, there has been another announcement for a greener community. It was a few emails back, but I'll send that through just for your interest in it's maybe something that you could possibly take advantage of. Thanks, Warren.
Thank you very much. Is there anything else for new business? Okay. Seeing none. It is 3:23, and we've got some work ahead of us here from recommendations and whatnot, and a few things going on. I will, following the stage 2, or I guess we're into stage 2 restrictions from the provincial health officer and the premier. We're looking at various options of what sports are going to look like going forward here in our community in the next few months. And so we're hopeful that there's some kind of play that takes place again. I was just on just right before this with a municipal society conversation about what it's going to look like in parks and play spaces and open spaces going forward. So I'm going to have to go back and review some of that. There was some, they had some legal representation. They had the provincial health, well, they had a health officer from Vancouver Island was on, and then somebody from Metro Vancouver, and then somebody from the BC Recreation and Parks Association, so the president from an organization. So it's gonna be interesting to see what kind of dynamics that we have from a parks and facilities perspective going forward, and how we're gonna be able to serve the community the best going. And yeah, so I just wanted to let you know that that's in the works as well. And I think the next meeting in June should be robust, and I will put out a request for agenda items prior to that. But we will have some for sure that we're going to have on the agenda. So, if seeing nothing else, if I could, I would like to ask for an adjournment, please.
So moved.
Seconded by Councillor Frass.